Very warm welcome to all. I hope all are safe and healthy. I'm Chirita, first year MA Women Studies student and a member of Progressive Students Forum. As we all know, Progressive Student Forum aim to create a democratic secular space in the campus and outside. It's our duty as responsible citizens to participate and listen to these initiatives. We PSF have organized several talk and lectures on diverse issues that India is facing today. On this particular day, we are going to discussing and interacting with labor organizers. Last year, we had the lecture, and students of TISS got a great opportunity to interact with Comrade K. Hemalata and Tejal Connector. Today, this May Day, and as we all know that this day is honor and recognize the accomplishment and struggle of working people and labor movement all over the world. The origin of the International Workers' Day can be traced back to the 19th century labor movement in the United States. We are in the middle of a crisis, extreme proportion, and working class is suffering the worst of the situation. Therefore, it's important that this issue facing the working class during the pandemic is properly addressed. The topic of today's event is migration, livelihood, and privatization, the working class amidst the pandemic. This is an extremely crucial issue during the current tragedy of epic proportions facing our country and working class in suffering the worst of the consequence. Our speaker for today is Comrade Aya Sindhu. Comrade Sindhu is trade union and women rights activist who is currently serves as the National Secretary of Center of Indian Trade Unions and General Secretary of All India Federation of Anganwadi Workers and Helpers. Her extensive work is defending a woman's right and labor issue includes organizing the Anganwadi and Asha workers in their ongoing struggle of decent wage, working condition, and social security benefit. The session will be chaired by Dr. Venkatesh Atreya. Dr. Venkatesh Atreya is a development economist and he was economist and also a professor for 3 decades. And Professor Atreya has held position in several reputed academic institutions in India, also in abroad. And he has written extensively issue on the agrarian change in human development and was lead author of report of the state of food insecurity in rural India and the report on state of food insecurity in urban India. And happily, I'm welcoming Comrade Dr. Atreya to handle the session. On to you, Comrade.
Congratulate and commend the Progressive Students Forum at TESS for organizing this important event on an extremely significant day, May Day. May Day has enormous significance globally, but some of you may not be aware that it has a special significance for the Indian working class movement, because May Day also happens to be the day that Comrade P. Sundaraya, the veteran leader of the Telangana struggle and of the communist movement in this country, was born. So, in a sense, we're celebrating May Day internationally and Comrade Sundaraya's birthday in India. So, I think it's a very happy occasion. I know things have not been very good for the working people in recent decades, but let's also, I think, at this moment, take into account the enormous strides we have made over the last century or so. Things would have looked rather more bleak if the trade union movement had not emerged and fought capital in numerous ways and learning as it went along to the point where it actually was also able to advance towards capturing political power in a significant part of the world, something that you could not have imagined at the time of the First World War, 1914, when, as Lenin described in his book Imperialism, the whole world had been divided up among the imperial powers. And, if you talked about socialism, somebody would have said, what is this figment of your imagination? But then we have had an enormous degree of change in the last 100 years. Despite some setbacks, serious setbacks, today the working class exercises significant degree of political influence across the world, even in neoliberal societies. Neoliberal societies have pushed back working class rights and have caused enormous harm. But even with all that, they can't push us back to the pre-industrial revolution days. So today you can actually see, if you don't take a very short-term view of things, in the long-term perspective, we have every reason to be optimistic that the working people will eventually assert the rightful place on earth and will in fact democratize society in a completely thoroughgoing fashion, not allowing class and privileges of birth at all to survive. And I look forward to, even if we are not around, humanity will someday get there where it will be a much more democratic and decent, civilized society, unlike the one we have at the moment. But even the one we have at the moment is an improvement on what was there about 100 years ago. So my first point to my young colleagues who are watching this, my young friends who are watching this, is to never lose hope, never give in to cynicism of any kind. The world is moving forward with zigzags and setbacks, but on the whole, over the long term, humanity is slowly, in terms of what we would like to see, slowly moving towards total liberation. It will take time, there will be ups and downs, but there is no alternative. As Rosa Luxemburg famously said, you can either choose barbarism or socialism. Capitalism is not really a choice, it's same as barbarism. And we are seeing right now the enormous crisis of global capitalism. I will want to hear Sindhu quite a bit, so I won't take too long. Although once you have put a mic in the hands of a professor, there are always occupational hazards in how he or she lets it go. I'll try and stick to my self-declared limit of about 15 minutes. In India at the moment, as we meet, we are meeting in exceptionally difficult times. We had a pandemic, and we're all talking about the pandemic, and currently we are seeing a second wave, although I'm happy to see that Bombay has done a little better. And of course, Kerala has managed a very difficult crisis so far brilliantly. But across the country, there is not much else, which is very, nice to see. There's a lot of the sheer arrogance and hubris of the central government has led to a lot of damage in the country in this pandemic. But remember that even before the pandemic, way back in 2019 July, when the new regime came and the finance minister presented a budget, the economy was in very bad shape. And very soon the crisis was declared by industrialists like Bajaj and Godrej and so on. And the regime, the BJP-led central government, showered concessions on the corporate sector by way of tax reductions and many other ways of concessions, overall amounting to almost about 3 lakh crores in the run-up to the 2020 February budget. In the budget, there were additional concessions by way of direct taxes. So, if you take the fiscal policy of the regime as an economist, I would say this has been the most anti-working class, anti-poor, anti-people regime in the history of independent India. And in the last year and a half, what is remarkable for me, and I'm sure Sindhu will give you a lot of experiences. What is truly remarkable is that the Indian working class has defied the odds of a raging pandemic and a repressive government in mobilizing working people on a number of key issues, starting with relief for people, to fight against these anti-labor legislations that have been passed, and to also building what's really a historic alliance with the peasantry. We've had this more than 6 months of heroic struggle by the peasantry of India. The composition of that peasantry is heterogeneous. Some are very well-to-do, but most of them are really quite small and marginal and middle peasants at most. So this fact that the peasantry can be such a brilliant organized class and organized force is something that is of great importance to the working class in the days to come. And I think the Indian working class has been quite proactive in moving towards a worker-peasant coordination on a number of struggles. The National coordination of central trade unions, and the Samyukta Kisan Morcha have coordinated quite well to take up a number of issues and to especially push back the narrative that the ruling regime and its RSS Sangh Parivar retinue were trying to impose, and has really pushed back the totally reactionary ideology of using religion for capturing political power. And it has managed to unite working people across religions, across languages, across ethnic backgrounds. And this is a phenomenal achievement, especially in the times of a pandemic when just mobilizing is such a hazardous enterprise. So I think we are actually, I might sound rather upbeat, but I am, notwithstanding the huge crisis the working class faces today in terms of its livelihood conditions. I think the working class is slowly emerging to a stronger wicket, and with the help of the peasantry, we should be able to push back the ruling regime and its backers, especially the Godi media that we see all the time. But we should be able to see in the coming years, the pandemic recedes, the conditions become a little more normalized, we should see a surge of class and mass struggles. And in that struggle, the working class will have a leading role to play. One important point I want to make, and I'm sure Sindhu will take it up, is that what the pandemic has shown us is that there's a huge mass of migrant labor in India who are completely unprotected in terms of the basic human rights. There's a huge crisis of livelihoods because of the pandemic and because of the slowdown that was there already before the pandemic. The government narrative that we are recovering and all that is just simply not credible. And we also have this spate of anti-labor laws and anti-farm laws that have been passed. So, ahead of us is a very difficult period for working class and peasant struggles. But it's also a period where things will certainly get better in terms of being able to organize people and focus particularly on these issues of migration, the rights of migrant labor, minimum conditions for migrant labor. Kerala has made some initiatives in that respect. The LDF government of Kerala has been quite proactive in this matter. The issue of livelihoods, and of course the issue of privatization. Because as you will see, the own response of the Modi regime, consistent response to the crisis, has been to privatize, privatize, and privatize. Give up everything, destroy the public sector, hand it over to the private sector, to the foreign capitalists as well. Crucial strategic areas like minerals and defense and so on. And of course, you have your own crony, biggies here at home who are also waiting for the farm laws to take effect so they can grab a bit of the pie in agriculture as well. But in the midst of all this, the whole Atmanirbhar farce, which essentially is nothing to do with Atmanirbhar at all, but on the contrary, allows India's very valuable industrial assets to be handed over at rock bottom prices to foreign and domestic monopoly capital. The working class has been leading the fight against this. Whether it's LIC in the financial sector or Navaratna public sector enterprises, all the major public sector companies we are looking at. Today, because of this disastrous policy, we can't even upscale the production of life-saving vaccines because we have destroyed the public sector pharmaceutical companies. So this is the overall environment, and the government's general line has been one of deceit, lying, and repression. But the working class will fight back, and in alliance with the peasantry, it will take India to better days in the future. And I'm sure that this is what we're all looking forward to. I'm sure that Sindhu will share her valuable experience, which permits us to hope for such a good outcome in the days to come. It's not easy, but we have to do it. We have no choices. And I'm sure that I'm very glad, by the way, that this is a forum where last year we had Comrade Hemlata. This year we have Sindhu. We have at least here is one forum where gender is recognized and gender equality is understood. And I'm glad that as a male, I still get to be on the platform. So I'm delighted to be here. I'm, of course, with Sindhu, with Hemlata, and all of you in the fight for gender equality. So over to Sindhu now.
Thank you, Comrade Atraya. First of all, I would like to extend revolutionary greetings on the occasion of May Day, and it's a day to reiterate our commitment to the struggle towards an egalitarian society, and also to remember the martyrs from the beginning, the Chicago martyrs. And also, I would like to, with the people who lost their dear ones for this due to this pandemic. Actually, in the second wave, it is not the pandemic. Actually, it is a genocide. We can say that if we call that what happened in our country. So we would like to express our grief and our togetherness with them all as well. Uh, Comrades, and I'm grateful to the Progressive Students Forum of Peace, and I'm glad to be associated with them. And comrades, and you have given a very big subject with very vast area where migration, and privatization, and livelihood issues. And this second wave of the pandemic started, we will I would like to or I will try to throw some or give some of my experiences and our the trade union movement's experiences and our assessment regarding the situation and whatever is happening. See that the pandemic which started much early in the last year, and the in our country, the lockdown and the declaration of the pandemic started in March 2020, as we all know. And last year, this time, two major issues which were into the focus, and that attracted the attention of the entire uh, world, and that was the issue of migration. One was there, and this time in the second wave of pandemic, it is the total failure of the public health system which is catching the attraction, or people are really concerned. Throughout people throughout the world is really concerned, and we can see that the last year around this time in May, two incidents. One is that on around 7th of May or so, 16 people died when they were sleeping, when they were walking down to their homes, and they were run over by train in Aurangabad. And the other child of 1.5 year old, and he was trying to wake his mother, who was actually died, and he could means he didn't understand that was in Muzaffarpur in Bihar. So these pictures even still haunt us, and when we are discussing it's I'm not going to the aspect means when we consider the migration issue, these tragedies which happened during the pandemic, this is only a reflection, or we can say the tip of the iceberg of the real means daily sufferings of the large population of migrant laborers, particularly the interstate and interdistrict, that means within the country migrant workers, and of the vast majority of them are in the unorganized sector. And in our country of around 1.3 billion, 135 crores or so, the estimates of the say that the migration around 50 crores, 550 million people network is really having a problem. But I was telling about the migration, and the estimation is that are migrant workers, migrants, and out of that, the estimation is that around 10 to and some of the latest estimates says that around 20 crores. That means around 35-40% of our total workforce are migrant workers. And whenever we discuss the issue of migrant laborers in general, in the media or in the academics, it's the aspect of the their means it's is more discussed in philanthropic or the charity aspect is coming. So they are the poor people, we must help them like that. But we as from the trade union movement, from the beginning, we are demanding that there has to be a policy which is based on the rights of the migrant workers as the workers. So this approach was there, and there is a piece of legislation which 1979 itself. So that means, and this is a time when the lockdown was there. Even now, even today, we can see in the bus stations, in the railway stations, in big cities like Bangalore and Mumbai, you can see the people are frantically not able to find any in the private transports, even to means from district to district, they are charging in this situation. And even the first wave of pandemic also, there was only a declaration of 5 kilo of ration per person, and which even 80% of the migrant workers who are at their workplace, they don't have any ration cards there. That is only the policy response. But what the government has done is that they have, during this period, they hard means spend so much of crocodile tears, but they have done what really is really criminal. They have done away with the existing facilities or existing rights of the migrant laborers in the country. The Migrant Workers Act, which was in place in 79, that has been amalgamated or they assimilated in the labor codes, in the OSH codes, the Interstate Migrant Workmen Regulation of Employment and Conditions of Services Act 1971, that is repealed and that is merged in the OSH. And there in that, in earlier, whatever that was there in the rights of the, actually in Kerala, that what Comrade Atre was mentioning about that, the Kerala government is doing something amazing. They call them guest workers, they provide them social security. They, when during the lockdown, their food was ensured. Their, this, is there any problem, Chitra?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but your network is really bad. I think I'm ready to just switch off the video so that we will be able to hear you properly.
Yeah. Okay. That is. So the government, what the government has done was that these Interstate Migrant Workmen Act, it was having provisions which means the Kerala government is whatever they are implementing, that is already having, it is already there in the existing legislation which the government is repealed. The government has repealed. One is that it has to ensure the equal wages. Then there has to be a displacement allowance to be given to the migrant worker. Then there is a provision for home journey allowance and wages during the home journey. And there is provision for the residential arrangements and medical facilities. These are already existing in Indian laws. And most thing is that there is a compulsory registration on both the source and the destination states, and within 15 days. And then maintaining of the registers, issue of passbooks with photo, what are the rates of wages, mode of payments, everything has to be there in the their passbook. These are all there. And for the accidents, there is a separate provision, and there is penalization for the violation. So this is what is the existing legislation is saying. But when their question, which is was never implemented, even it's a weakness of the trade union, very weak in our means in case of the unorganized sector, among the unorganized sector, there is a means weakness persisting regarding the migrant workers. So there that has never implemented, but what the government has done is that the provisions were diluted. The government is declaring that everything is there, but it is not there. The Migrant Workmen's Act has to be implemented. That threshold was 5 workers. The government in this OSH code, it is increased to 10 workers. And then the lump sum amount only, there is no, that allowances are not mandatory. And of course, the entire implementation of the labor legislation mechanism, implementation mechanism has been diluted. So there is no scope, even much, means lesser scope for implementation of even the existing provision. And this compulsory registration and all those things are not no more there. So there is only a declaration of a helpline and some ration declaration is there. That's the. But in addition to that, what the government in February 2020, they have brought a piece of this BJP government, what they are aiming at is that in the name of the migrant workers, they want to take the political advantage. And in that, they are talking nothing about their rights, their ensuring of minimum wages, and all those things are not at all talked about. But what they are talking about much more in the policy is that the political inclusion, as you may see that out of the total migrant population, around 50% is from the UP, Bihar, Rajasthan, and Madhya Pradesh, most populous states. And you may see that out of the migrant population, 25% of the migrants are from UP. So if this is the situation, so they are what they are proposing, instead of having the labor rights, minimum wages, and the right for means the traveling expenses and all. Instead of that, they are telling that they will be allowed for electronic voting. So this is what they are bringing. So that means it is a total politicization of the migrant issues to take the political advantage. And similar case is that you can see that in this during this pandemic, the other issue which came up very means especially during the second wave, it is the total failure of the public services system, especially the public health system. So then in that, what the government's policy response was that? You see that in the healthcare sector, around 60% or more than 60% is the private sector. Very means less stake is there for the public health system in total. But when the who has addressed the pandemic? The statistics shows that as less than 10% of the entire treatment of this pandemic, the COVID-19, was done by the private sector. So if that is the situation, the what is the means 90%, more than 90% of the pandemic was handled by the public health system, which is a very small amount in the total health sector in our country. The government was supposed to improve that, and that is what the pandemic means. The lockdown was meant for is stopping the spread of the pandemic, the disease, and in that meantime, that the government was supposed to improve the healthcare system. But really what they have done, that you can see that the total budgetary allocation during 2020-21 was around 69,000 crore. And even the government is claiming so much that even we cannot rely upon any of the statistics what this government is providing. But even in that, you can see that during that first 2 3 months, the government has written off 68,000 crores rupees of the willful defaulters, including this Vijay Mallya and Mehul Choksey and company, and Nirav Modi and company, 50 people. 68,000 crores have been written off by the Reserve Bank of India. They loans. So, and the total spending for 135 crores of people was 68,000 crore. And what is the increase in the budget? The next budget, it was the 35,000 crore, which was earmarked for the vaccination, which now the government is backtracking. And what is happening with the vaccine policy, I'm not going to elaborate, but the government, through the years of privatization, they have closed down 3 of the major vaccine producing factories of our country, public sector companies, and they have not at all started. And even the patent policy and all has been changed to help for the profiteering during this such a situation. And the vaccine policy has been diluted to make it, means it was always free in India, the vaccination it was, and now the government is allowing these private companies and including the foreign companies, which means which will be imported to our country, to essential services, essential medicines like remdesivir, and was they are not allowed. And the question of oxygen, for which thousands are dying daily, even today when we are speaking, people are. And here also we can see what is the situation during the last 1 year. The government didn't do anything except for the Kerala government, which is the only government, only state which is a surplus for oxygen. There is nothing being done. And what is now, means who are now helping this to overcome this crisis? It is the public sector companies, the public sector steel and petroleum companies, which is coming out, stopping their industrial oxygen production and converting it and channelizing it to the medical oxygen and providing them. The Visakhapatnam steel plant, one of the country's prestigious uh, institution, public sector institution, which has helped us to become really self-sufficient in production of steel and all. So this company was even during this second budget, means the last budget, the government has notified it for total privatization, and there is a historic huge struggle which is going on against the privatization. So the companies like the Visakhapatnam Steel, the Bokaro Steel, these are the plants which are helping the country overcoming this crisis, this loss of life. And we can see even this during this pandemic period, what the government is doing, instead of this is one thing that they are not doing enough. But what they are doing is that they are doing the, means they are taking, as declared by the ministers, the Prime Minister himself, and the Niti Aayog chairman, they are using this opportunity where people are locked down, people are in a panic, dealing with the pandemic. That occasion has been utilized to for total privatization, total sell-off of our country, changing every policy which is for the people. So in that also they have, earlier also they have been continuously trying for the privatization through different routes. Now, in this budget, the government has declared a total policy shift of, means direct privatization. Earlier, it was through selling of some shares, different routes they were. And here we can see that in that also, the government has declared one more thing, that one is that they are handing over the shares or the selling of the companies to the private. The other thing which in a very beautiful name the government has given for monetization policy. That means direct selling of the assets of the public sector to the private. So the government is aiming 2.5 lakh crores through asset selling of the assets of the public sector companies and public sector and departments. So the government has this budget itself for 1 year, 1,75,000 crores of our public asset they have notified for privatization. And the assets monetization, what they call the selling of the assets, which is 2.5 lakh crores. And in that railways are there 90,000. That means all these departments also they are put on for the monetization. That means the government is aiming at selling of each and everything. 7,000 kilometers of road. That means again also money around 20,000 crores. That means the youth hostels and then the sports department, the stadia, all these are being put for sale. And the airports, of course, is there. Then the ship ministry, they are selling the ports and all. So these are the assets of the company. The companies are there, like the land of the railways, land of different companies, and the history like that the government is planning for selling of the assets of the companies. Also this is what is happening when the public services or the public sector is at most important, and that is the only sector which is fighting for the people managing things. So that time the government is going for the total privatization one of the system, public sector companies. And even the services sector, what they are doing is that in the health sector, one is that there is no improvement in the existing health system, no more hospitals, no more recruitment of health personnel, not even paying the frontline workers, which does like the ASHA workers at the Anganwadi workers, the frontline workers, there is no recognition of their work and they are not paid properly, no minimum wages. For that, there is no money. But what the government is doing is that instead of having the public health system in place, they are bringing the insurance route. That means through the health services, through the insurance. That is for commercialization of the entire health system. And things like that is meant for having the total commercialization of the health system. There you see that the people's money will be channelized to private hospitals as well as private insurance companies. Now the government, in the name of the pandemic, they have allowed the foreign insurance companies to invest in the Indian health system. That means the total commercialization of the Indian health system. That is what the government is doing. And this overall privatization drive and all, it's all part of the entire total policy framework where the people are losing livelihoods and the unemployment. Even before the pandemic, it was all-time high on the 45 years. The means in 45 years, that was the system before pandemic. And now the statistics says that 80% of the unorganized sector workers, they lost their jobs. And the food intake, as there is a study just recently came that 60 to 70% of the decline in the food consumption in among our people. So this is the real poverty is increasing. There will be hunger deaths, which is already happening in our country, which is very underreported. And this entire policy framework, which is a part of the effort to overcome the global capitalist crisis, which Comrade Atreya was mentioning about. So here, the one aspect is that the total withdrawal from the public sector and the public services. That means that is increasing the unpaid work. For example, for the it is there is a gender aspect. It is one is the direct job loss due to the lockdown and the entire economic crisis that is happening. The income losses, the wage cuts, means in the name of the pandemic and lockdown also, because of the small scale industries, they are also in a crisis. That is also happening. At the same time, there is the withdrawal from the public services. The health service is not there, the education services are stopped, and then the other like the electricity and the essential services, that also is being withdrawn, it is being privatized. That means that addition of the mm, uh, paid work to unpaid work. And also during the lockdown, you can see that the domestic workers were lost their jobs, and there is work from home which was in place. That there also, particularly when we talk about the gender aspect, the women's workload has been increased. And when the domestic workers lose their jobs, they are losing their jobs, and there in the employers, they are working women too, and their paid work was being means shifted to unpaid work. So there is a big increase in the unpaid care work done by women, that also was amounting to around 14 lakh crores. That is one estimate which came in some studies in the international agencies, that that kind of amount, that is much more being increased. So that means this money, this work is converted into the profit of the employer classes. So this is what is happening in one side. And the other side, even the existing labor rights and all have been curtailed. You see, you know about the labor codes, the 8-hour work is now implemented from 1st of April, which they have kept it pending. So 8-hour work, now it can be 12 hour and more. There is no limit for overtime. The working hours has been increased. There is a reduction in the minimum wages. They have changed the calorie intake, means reduce the calorie intake which was calculated in the minimum wages. That was minimum wages are also being lessened. And then the rights of the workers for unionization, these are the basic rights for which the Haymarket taken away. And then along with that, this is one, the privatization, the public asset has been means is handed over to the private and the international companies, multinational companies, and the natural resources, that also is being handed over. That is policy changes in the forest right acts and all. And in addition to that, that is where they brought in these farm laws, where the land, they brought the land acquisition in 2014 that they could not implement. So through these farm laws, one is the land of the country which is there with the peasantry, that also they want to take over. So that is one aspect. And the pricing of the farm produce. So there, this total wealth, amassing of the wealth, or the entire profiteering and the wealth amassing to the private or the multinationals and the Indian corporates. This is the process which is happening, and this is done in a means in on these all these this, whether the migration policy or the labor laws or the farm laws, these are all, or the electricity or the withdrawal of the services, these are all part of the entire policy framework through which they are trying to overcome this capitalist crisis. So this is bound to intensify. They are trying their best, and they have utilized it during the pandemic. So there the question arises, the crucial question, that how the working class and the working class movement has reacted to this. From the beginning, last 30 years of the neoliberal policies, the working class movement has been fighting that. We can see that the privatization till now, they could not completely privatize the public sector, whether it is banking sector or the insurance sector, the finance sector, or is even the public sector companies like the Coal India or even the steel. When the Kisan struggle is there, the one of the demand is that withdrawal of the electricity bill. So that bill is still now electricity bill. It has not been legalized, means enacted. It is not yet an act, only due to the struggle of the working class movement of our country. So, I think that need to be means assessed properly, and that is means very important. But whatever is happening with the people and the working class and the peasantry, that is obvious. People are assessing that, but how we are reacting, that also need to be properly assessed. That is also very crucial in the coming days. The working class, that's why I mentioned the working class movement has been consistently, step by step, and the initiative of the trade unions like CITU. When we started the anti-neoliberal price struggle, we were alone. We went for the first national struggle in strike, general strike into. But today, when we had during this pandemic, the 20th general strike on 26th of November, we have the unity, including the INTUC, that except for of course the BMS, the trade union unity struggle, we could achieve that trade union unity, and the trade union platform is systematically working together against these policies. So through that, and we have been continuously, consistently working towards the unity with the peasantry as well. So there you can see, and even I may say that the privatization drive was there in the first phase of this pandemic as well. There was the historic, wonderful coal sector strike for 3 days, which they government could not move ahead with the coal sector privatization. So such struggles were there within. We started on 21st of April 2020 itself that Bhashan nahi, ration chahiye. That the government, we don't want the speeches, but we want the line workers, different issues we have been consistently taking up. And within 6 months of the total lockdown, we could declare the first general strike during the pandemic itself. So that was what the 26th November general strike. And we can see that the historic, the means we are fortunate enough to live during this period where this historic peasant struggle, the Kisan struggle is going on throughout India and also on the borders of the capital. So that struggle means, as many may be conceiving as a spontaneous struggle, it is not a spontaneous struggle. It is having many aspects of spontaneity in there, but it is very much an organ. It was the call for the 26th and 27th of November Delhi March was given in coordination with the All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee, which actually originally gave the call for that Delhi March, along with the central joint platform of central trade unions. We have given the calls both together and in coordination with each other. And this, we may say, I am not going into the aspects of these historic farmer struggles, but we can see that this struggle has also is having means the emerged with the backing up of the trade union movement and their struggles. Whether this call I have already spoken about, and then this struggle in the borders, which was the maximum participation from Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP, the Green Revolution belt. But we have really given it an all India character. It is through the support of the trade union movement, whatever call was given by this historic Samyukta Kisan Morcha in their struggle for national Bandh and all, the trade union movement has made it possible throughout the country with the unconditional support of each and every call by the Kisan Front. So this developing of, and that shows without even giving means they are called by the central trade unions or the central leadership, the people at the ground were really implementing each and every call of the Sanयुक्त Kisan Morcha. Even today it is happening. That means the Indian working class is becoming more matured towards working towards the worker percent unity, means which may develop into a working worker percent alliance. And comrades, I would like to, towards the end, I would like to conclude with some of the features of the means today. Through these struggles, you can see that even during this period, uh, some elections happened, and tomorrow also, of course, there will be crucial results of the elections will be there of the 5 states. That will also be crucial in the coming days, means the future of our country, what is going to happen. So there also, there is, of course, of all the chances of manipulation, the money was spent, and the elections are what we call as bourgeois elections, bourgeois parliamentary elections, of course. But you can see that what happened in Punjab, the municipal elections, one candidate of BJP, he got only one vote. That means, in spite of that, what is compelling the BJP, the government, to pursue this neoliberal policy is that this is the total imperialism, the total failure, surrendering to this Indian and foreign monopoly capital. So they are under compulsion, not the people, not the working people, the government, which is an agent under compulsion. So even their political base is eroding, they are compelled to implement the policies, and for that they need to be means an authoritarian regime, and they are means totally trying for that as well. But what we can see is that the working class and the peasantry in the leadership, the people's movement has created an atmosphere where you can see the one of the aspects of the peasant struggle also is a unity of the peasant classes. So there that has emerged because there is of this objective situation. So that is there, and with the leading of the small peasants and the working class as the backbone of these continuous consistent struggles, this has been developed. That conflict of within the ruling classes has been developed. The big bourgeoisie and the non-big bourgeoisie, there is a conflict which is developed. And in the total federal system, in the political arena also, that you can see that the regional bourgeoisie is also developing a conflict with the national bourgeoisie. So these conflicts has to be developed only at will, only through the consistent struggles. So at this time of pandemic, everywhere there is chaotic situation. People are running here and there for oxygen, their medicine and all. Even though in this situation as well, there is much more hope. There is hope, and that hope is only on the struggles at the ground level, where the trade union movement is leading, and along with the peasantry, demanding now for the medicines, the oxygen, and to have the public health system improved, for income support for the 7,500 rupees per family, and for the mm, ration for all. These with these demands, and they are there on the streets helping people with ration, help with medical help, along with other sections of students, youth. Of course, they are also very much there in the forefront. I think in the coming days, these struggles of the people, different sections of the people, and the unity with the leadership of the working class, and along with the peasantry, with other sections, including student, youth, women, and all these conflicts and all the contradictions are coming up, and it will be much more intensified in the coming days, and it has to be made a political force in the coming days with that hope, and this with that confidence in during our time. I think that we can once again greet the people, the real fighters, the working class, fighting the pan system and on the occasion of May Day. Thank you, comrades.
Thank you, Comrade Sindhu. And next, I'm welcoming Comrade Atreya for his valuable comments on the talk.
Am I on visually? Okay. Should be okay here. Yeah. Now, first of all, let me share some good news for all the participants, since they're all worried about how well the working class can fight this crisis. But are you aware that Times Now has decided to suspend its election coverage in the interest of course, covering COVID? Huh? You can imagine that tells you something about the straws in the wind. Number two, even on a very trivial thing like municipal elections in Karnataka, the BJP has lost heavily. Now, I'm saying this because Meera Suresh had raised this question, that BJP has huge electoral support and all that. It's very likely they have probably larger electoral support given with all the resources at the moment and their whole polarizing campaigns over the last several years in many parts of the country. But Meera Suresh, do remember that even in the elections that led to their forming governments, they always got a fairly small share of the overall vote, never a majority share. 38%, including allies last time, and around that this time as well. This is at the central level, and subsequently, elections have been very close, and of course, sometimes against the BJP as well. I'm not saying that it's a matter of defeating BJP electorally alone. That's not how Sindhu or I would look at it. It's a matter of fighting their policies and building class alliances across the country that can be more long-term, because as you, Meera, correctly pointed out yourself, the other opposition parties, including the Congress, haven't exactly differentiated their policies from that of the BJP on many counts, on economic policies, for example. I don't want to get to that, but I just want to say that there's no reason to lose confidence in the onward march of history. It may not be at the pace at which we would like it to be, but I see a lot of courageous fight back, and Sindhu has described in great detail some of that in the last year and a half or so. Let me just remind you once again that India was already slowing down as an economy before the pandemic. The government of India has been completely ruthless and inhuman in not providing relief for the people during the pandemic. We saw those images of a child talking to a dead mother in the station. I mean, let's not even remember these horrible visuals. So, in extraordinarily difficult circumstances, with a raging pandemic, India's peasants and workers have put up a year of struggle that is unparalleled anywhere in the history of the modern working class movement in many parts of the world. Today, where else in the world do you see such a phenomenal movement as the peasant movement, cutting across religious barriers, linguistic barriers, ethnic barriers, and pushing back the entire rhetoric of communalism? So, I think what the peasant struggle and the trade union initiatives of this year teach us is that there are alternatives, and that it requires persistent, continuous work on a daily basis over a long period to really sustain these changes in consciousness. The very fact that we are able to conduct this seminar today and there is sufficient interest among the young people to listen to some of these issues is a very encouraging sign. So I think, I must tell you that personally, when I went to study in the US, I went as a completely non-political person. The struggle of the Vietnamese people and the American student movement against the war transformed me. To each of us in our lives, some accident happened, some event happened that turns our, outlook completely. And I think across the country, I find evidence.
Comrade, sorry to interrupt. Can you just adjust your screen a little bit? We can't see your face properly.
Yeah,
a little bit down. Yes, now works. Thanks a lot.
Better? 1 minute. Sorry. Yeah, this may be slightly better. Okay, so I think I see good reason to be positive. This is for Meera Suresh, and for the other questions that have come. I must also say that the questions have been very good. I've been looking at some of the questions, not all of them, because I don't have it on my screen. I see them being run, but I'm trying to look at my Facebook link, and see if I can find the questions. Maybe Gautam can help me find the questions, but I'm sure that Sindhu would want to answer some of them. This question has been there raised about by Mr. Saha, I think, about the international. Okay, very concrete question from Gautam. What should the government of India do? Well, ideally, we should say resign and get the hell out of here. But of course, we can't escape like that. So what we would like to say is that the left parties and even all the opposition parties together put forward a list of concrete demands by way of relief, by way of provision of grain, by way of provision of cash of 7,500 rupees a month for all non-income tax-paying families for a period of 6 months. These have been on the table for a very long time. But what has this government done? I mean, even whatever they announce is not being implemented, and the entire focus of the government has been on putting people in jail. You have a chief minister who says that if you ask for an oxygen cylinder, I'll put you in jail. I'll proceed against you under the some wretched act. So it is not. This government is not going to listen. What should they do? They should provide immediate relief. They should provide universal vaccination without charge. It's possible. What prevents you from compulsory licensing? Because it's allowed under the WTO. What prevents you from temporarily taking over the two companies for the period of the pandemic and then giving it back to them later? What prevents the government of India from simply nationalizing vaccine production? Yeah, as the Kerala Health Minister said, if we were in office at the center, we would simply nationalize vaccine production. Why the hell should it be in the corporate greedy sector? So I think a number of concrete things can be done by the government. Tomorrow they decide to do it. I don't know if the results that come out tomorrow will make them rethink, but unlikely given the character of the RSS BJP combined and their outlook on human life. I don't expect any consideration for human lives in the weeks and months to come. Their entire agenda is to stay in power and somehow use communal polarization to sustain themselves. But since you've asked the question, we can say 1, 2, 3. 7,500 rupees a month for all non-income tax paying households. 10 kilograms of grain per adult per month for another 6 months. Double or triple the MNREGS employment in the countryside. Create an urban employment guarantee program. Make sure that everybody gets vaccinated without having to pay for it. And since you've talked about money and you've been starving the state governments, even of their due from the GST and so on, and every time the central government of India offers concessions to the corporate sector, the loss of revenue is borne not by the center but also by the states. States are being squeezed in the pandemic. There's been great centralization of decision making, complete denial of financial states. All this must go. In fact, the central government must go. States have been doing a better job of handling it, except for people like Ajay Singh Bisht. Otherwise, they win. At least states like Kerala and Tamil Nadu, okay, with all limitations, even Tamil Nadu doesn't do too badly. So I would say yes, just implement relief measures. But what's the point of saying it to this government, Gautam? They're not serious, right? They know. We've been saying this for 1 year, 1.5 years. So I don't think it is the government that's going to change things. I think people are going to change things. That process has started. We'll put pressure on the government, definitely. Okay. Any other questions? Sindhu, you want to respond to this? To add to this? Or?
There are so many questions. Which one you will leave? But I can.
No, on this question, you want to respond. Gautam's question.
I think that's
which is about what I've said what we should do from the demand.
Actually, we have already towards the end. I just mentioned about our demands during this. This was there. Actually, the first wave of pandemic, when it was there, for the migrant laborers and all, it was the working class and the peasantry who was doing in their relief operations, not the governments. Even though their COVID centers, they all failed, but only the people were providing that. So people came out and that was the thing. One was ration and the income support, then the health facilities. These are all the basic demands of the thing. It's not only the working class, but the entire population. It's a joint struggle of all the mass movements for that. So at various levels, we are trying to pressurize also from the local governments and means local district collectors. There is unlimited power given to the district authorities in the Pandemic Act. So there we are trying to build up. Yeah,
Short
comrade.
answer to Gautam's question is provide 7,500 rupees a month for each household which is not in the income tax bracket. Provide 10 kilograms of grain per adult per month for the foreseeable 6 months at least. These are specific things. And similarly for frontline workers, for Anganwadi workers, demands are there. Sindhu has talked about them. So it is not as if the government doesn't know the demands. They will see the government is not willing to spend a paisa on the people. They have 20,000 crores for the Central Vista, but they don't have money for vaccines. So what are we talking about? What kind of? I mean, I don't think yeah.
So the specific issues of the Anganwadi and Asha workers, one is the safety. They are not provided with the health facilities when they are supposed to go door to door. Even in the COVID centers, I'm told there is no safety gear, no sanitizers and masks are not provided. So the first and foremost is the safety gear, not only for the Anganwadi Asha workers, but all the frontline workers. Even in the hospitals, it's a terrible situation. Means even the second wave of pandemic, it's more dangerous. There, the Asha workers are not even provided with the sanitizers. That is there, and as you know, that their income is very low, and the Asha workers are piece rate workers. There, the 2,000 rupees per month, their wages are pending even up to 6 months. So their regular payment and means the risk allowance and all these, and these are all the basic demands. And means in some of the places, even during the pandemic, we had, including strikes, we had a scheme workers national strike in 6th of, means 9th of August last year. So that even now the Asha workers has given a strike notice for 24th of this month, 24th of May, for these demands. So even in indoor, the Asha workers and the Anganwadi workers, they could get an additional payment from the district authorities. So these are the struggles also are going along with these demands. Some other questions are there in the Facebook I have seen. I think that I can try to be very brief and and similar. There is a question on the vaccine, the federation data, how many of them have been exposed to virus. The exposure is so many, but there are deaths. In Andhra Pradesh, 20 Asha workers died and none of them got the 50 lakh means the announced compensation. And even last week, one Anganwadi worker, they were put on the election duty, the ministry has died. So there were so many COVID deaths of the workers. Many places, they are not even termed as COVID deaths. They are not given the certificates. Very few of them got the insurance, their families got the insurance compensation. Similarly, there is a question by one comrade that about the death of the teachers. Even means
Yes.
the UP, the teachers
Madhya Pradesh.
union has declared that they will not go for the means the counting duty. So there, the police personnel, so many deaths were there. The doctors died, and the government announced that in the parliament that they don't have any data of the deaths. So this is the situation. But from the ground level, wherever there is union, means you want, I can share one example. One Asha worker died means of vaccination. When the first round the health workers were vaccinated, and there the union took it up continuously, and the minister has to come, and then she was given 50 lakh compensation, but many have died without any compensation. This is the situation where the people are there at the ground, they are organized, they are taking up the issues, then they are getting some remedies. Otherwise, nobody is getting any. That is our experience. The government machinery is a total failure, especially in UP and Madhya Pradesh. There is nothing like a government there. The bureaucracy also is so insensitive even to its own people. Even the doctors are not getting means any property treatment. That is the situation. So that's so. And then there was a question. Female, I was asked for some of these questions. I thought that yes, this is a thing that is very much there. the labor participation, female labor participation rate. Actually, before the pandemic itself, we have taken up this issue of the lower women's work participation rate. It has come around 20% or so. What does it mean? 80% of the Indian women are sitting idle? It's not at all. Women are working throughout the day and night. So, that means that there is no paid work. The entire paid work category is becoming the unpaid. That is what is happening. That process is happening. So, what we were demanding means even 2028 March, just before the declaration of the lockdown, we had observed a jail bharow on 8th March. We have means the filling of the jails. So more than I think around 5 lakh, more than 5 lakh women went to jail demanding the counting of the women's unpaid work in the GDP. So that is one of the demands of the CITU. It was a conference demand of the CITU. 16th conference was held in January, and that was a conference demand that the women's unpaid labor has to be calculated first, and there is an ILO demand that uh, um, recognize, reduce and redistribute the women's unpaid work. So that is one of the aspects, and there is a demand for special, means for that also specific necessities, means for specific demands for these having the gas, means like that, then the water connectivity, all these things. And in that time they can say that the left front in Kerala, they have announced some kind of means quantification or the recognition of the women's unpaid work. So that is there, and the women's unpaid work category, this scheme workers will be there. That is also our demand, and we are the trade union which has means the in the forefront of bringing the entire question of scheme workers in the means national and international field. That and in their care work question came only after the means more than means 30 years of struggles of the Anganwadi Federation. That now even this question came up of the unpaid care work. Last year only the UN and the ILO has come up with the unpaid care work thing. So this is a consistent, continuous struggle, and then means then the entire question means that is not a question here. That the entire democratization of the family and the work division in the family also will come up in that. So this is, and here the left front in Kerala, they have put this question in a right framework. We can debate on means how and how means what are all the different aspects and that. So, but that has to be recognized. That is the first step. So that also is one of the aspect of the lowest women participation rate. These are all the means even the caste question also will be there that when these are counted. So I think that is there. Comrade Atreya can add anything to that. You're muted, I
I'll
think.
tell you that even earlier, in the period from 11-12 to 17-18, if you look at the periodic labor force survey, women's labor force participation came down and women's unemployment rates were higher. In the COVID period, it's been even more so, but more important, with all this working from home and so on for some sectors, if anything, the workload on the woman at home has increased in the COVID period. It's been a very severe burden on the woman in terms of increased care functions and more demands from the men staying at home and working. So in a sense, it's been extremely difficult for women in this period, and solidarity actions have come from the women's movement. Studies have been done. But my point is, if you focus only on the immediate, you'll get certain, specific answers. But what is the lesson you are drawing from this last year and a half of how the working class of India has confronted challenging political and economic situation of the pandemic, and how totally unexpectedly a massive peasant movement has emerged, and it has been able to build bridges and links with a rising working class movement. These are things we've not seen for a number of years. I mean, working class has been fighting, but for the first time the working class has had a massive supporting movement and an ally which is the point that Sindhu was focusing on, of the peasant movement. So I think what we can ask governments to do, not do, I don't know. This government will not do anything. Okay, let's be realistic. The only thing we can do is to throw out this government. But otherwise, what should be our demands? And our demand should focus on the basic rights of working people. I mean, look at the narrative of the government of India, both before the pandemic and during the pandemic. What did they say? It is the corporate sector that creates wealth in this country. And what nonsense. The pandemic showed you the corporate sector creates no wealth. When the workers don't go to work, there's no production. It is the workers who create wealth. On May Day, we should be asserting it, saying it up front. It is the workers who create wealth with the help of nature and whatever knowledge mankind has accumulated, whatever tools mankind has accumulated. And the corporates have no right to this enormous wealth produced by the working people. That's the bottom line. And it's not easy to implement. So that is something that keep in mind when all these pious declarations come about, the great creation of wealth. What is wealth creation in the stock market? There's an exchange of pieces of paper. Where is wealth being created in the stock market? Production has to be there for wealth to be created. As simple as that. And production is possible only with living labor. Old man Marx was absolutely on the spot when he said this. So, I think we need to think in larger macro terms as well. Okay?
There are some questions, I think. One is about the delivery service. Okay, of course, that we were trying for means unionization. And during this pandemic, I think this Swiggy and all these delivery services we could have all the places we are attempting, and whenever it is coming to your means contact, you also try to unionize and bring to our trade union for that. I would like to request you people, because the youngsters are more having these kind of new technological services and all. So that is also we are trying, and in the IT services also, that IT enabled services. This is one area. This delivery services we are also attempting, which is very very minimum. And then there is another question about the the nature of the work that I also told, that means the such a change in the character of the means the work itself, that more contractualized and all, and it means even the new technology, artificial intelligence, all these things are being utilized for having means more kind of informalization of the labor force. That is what our experience is. Then there is another question about the cooperatives. So I think that means I get it fully. One is that the formation, the labor cooperatives is a very different thing. That the like our example of this Dinesh BD is there. That when there was a crisis and the workers took over, and that is one thing. But these kind of these collectives in the so-called concept of the self-help kind of formations, I am not for that. And personally, I don't think that it is a kind of their ideology, self-help type of ideology. I think that is not an alternative. But cooperative, of course, there can be, but it depends. It depends on different circumstances, the kind of labor relations and the kind of marketing force. But the bargaining capacity is a different thing. That if you are unionized, that the collective bargaining rights and the cooperatives, that you cannot mix it that way. But the cooperatives, of course, that means according to the situation, the working class workers cooperatives have to be experimented in. Even in Kerala and all, there are cooperatives which is very successfully working. Of the labor cooperatives are also there. So that is the thing. But that cannot be an alternative to the means existing thing. The unionization is a totally different thing. What Comrade?
Yeah, Ananya, I think the sentiment is understandable, that can collective action via cooperatives challenge the capitalist mode of production as a whole. I don't think it can challenge the mode of production as a whole, but I think it can be an important instrument in the struggle against capitalist domination, also in debunking myths about capitalist enterprise, its indispensability. If working people can run an enterprise effectively and successfully, and in the larger social interest, they demonstrate in that particular case that we don't need capitalists to run this, right? But it's not simple. It's not like you can just take over the entire economy from that. So ultimately, you have to fight the capitalist class, overthrow the rule. There's no getting away from that. Cooperatives are instruments. And in the bourgeois system, cooperatives are being completely corrupted and utilized by ruling elites across the country. But it still means that the left should try and work in the cooperative movement with cooperatives and try and innovate, try and experiment, be open to new ideas, but never foster the illusion that promoting the cooperative movement by itself will help you challenge capitalism. It won't. It is a useful instrument in the fight against big capital. And we'll discuss at the Kisan Sabha as well. I happen to be a member of the Central Kisan Council of the All India Kisan Sabha. And we have discussed this. Krishna Prasad, who is also a leader there and who's Sindhu's partner, he's also been involved in putting a lot of ideas in cooperativization. But we all recognize that cooperatives can do so much, but they cannot be the replacements for working class struggle or socialist transformation. That is two different levels. Okay, but useful nonetheless. Yes, not dismissing it.
Comrades, there are some other questions. I think that all those things related to one is that about the strategy of the left and RSS BJP means backing elections, then the Bihar elections experience, and also whether the government will increase. I would put all those things together. I think that the entire questions, all these things, what is the means our strategy to counter all these things. We all know what is happening, what are the processes, how they are utilizing the religion, all this authoritarianism. So I think that whatever means we have achieved and we are going ahead in the line of building up the struggles against these policies. And now the thing is that it means through all these 30 years of continuous, consistent struggles, that time even the peasantry was not ready to accept that the globalization is something very, very bad. So even means when the ASEAN things were also there, that even the cash crops price reduction, all those things were the peasantry was not ready. But now through consistent struggles, we could achieve a certain level of unity among the working class and peasantry, and among the means different peasant classes also, and which is having a political implication as of now. So how to channelize that to change a regime change, or at least a little bit policy means withdrawal. So that is what means now at this stage, I think that it has to be advanced. The possibility is there. The crisis is so much deepened. So the attacks will be more, means whatever may be tomorrow's election results, the Modi government is going to unleash a kind of means the policy privatization, all these policies, they are going to continuously unleash, and they are going to unleash anti-democratic arrests and all those kinds of things are also going to be there. That is going to be a very tough and challenging time. But at the same time, people are also more and more realizing they are coming up. And here I would like to say that our examples earlier also means we could, during this last 30 years, we had the United Front government, we had the UPA 1 and 2 governments, the UPA 1 government where the Congress was forced to implement some of these Narega kind of activities, so that when we are the class politics is influencing this policy changes, so they will be forced to implement, withdraw or withhold some of their measures. So that kind of a force now it is emerging. That we could see even in the Bihar elections. What we have seen for the first time, I think, in one of the state elections, the unemployment questions, the wage questions, the migrant labor questions were discussed and debated, not the caste and all. So that is one of the biggest achievements of our movement, our consistent movement. But in spite of that, the religion is there, the caste factors are there, that also we could not overcome it fully. It will exist, and even within the peasantry also, that contradiction has not means completely gone. The caste questions are there. I would like means if time permits, I would like to give one example. What happened happened in the beginning of the pandemic when the reverse migration started. There was a dearth of the agricultural workers in Haryana and Punjab. Even now it is there. So there, the panchayats, the same panchayats which is having means boycotting the BJP leaders and means stripping them, the same panchayats in Haryana, they had a resolution that those whoever will be paying the agricultural labor means more money, they will be socially boycotted. So that what we can see that the same there they are giving the workers percent means there are comments about their caste and there is a possibility of unity. There is the role of the working class which has to take the lead. They have to take the question of the peasantry means first. So that is what they are doing now. So this is an emerging situation where the other experiment due even this has happened during the pandemic in short span of 6 months. What happened in UP in the Muzaffarnagar where the same Tikayat they were all alleged of siding with the means the that communal riots. So there they have come to terms. They I mean, both of the factions, which the Muslim community leadership, they had a division in their own organization. Now they have come together and they said that we have to fight this Modi regime. So this kind of a unity is also emerging, and they come and this caste question also is there in some of the places. The Kap panchayats they are making it as a total Kap like that. So this is also coming up. So this is where the class question will dominate. There is an emerging situation due to the crisis of the capitalism, due to the attack. That attack is giving us an opportunity to have wider unity and to for a policy change and a regime change also. So this is the emerging situation, and that is the only way. And where there we have to be patient, we have to work hard and hard. So and there I think that there can be a policy change. There is the only way, and we are very much hopeful also. So that is the left strategy: mobilize people on the issues.
Anuriti Saxena, I have a specific response to your question. You talked about Bihar. The difference between the two fronts in the final voting count is hardly 63,000 votes. And this is despite the enormous resources that BJP had. And given that enormous resources that they had and the control over the media and many other things, this is a remarkable result. It just so happened that in a very narrow, contest, despite both JDU and BJP being on one side, and of course, the spoil sport played by LJP's new outfit, the opposition did very, very well under very difficult circumstances. See, the BJP's formula has been generally polarize, use that to win votes, and if you don't get the MLAs elected, then purchase the opposition MLAs. And this has worked well for them because of the nature of our political, many of our bourgeois political parties.
Last election, Nitish win in the other side, na? He was there with the Mahagathbandhan last year.
Yeah, so
then they got the majority and he formed the government with the BJP. This time they were against and they were together, and in spite of that,
exactly. And yet BJP barely won. So I think even in Bihar, Anuriti must see that Bihar also has seen a decline in BJP influence. We are not saying it's a linear thing. It'll be ups and downs. BJP will manage to polarize. But as Sindhu said, they will bring in not only ultra neoliberal, harsh, repressive acts, they'll also bring in CAA and NRC. At the moment, please note, thanks to the peasant movement, thanks to the upsurge in the country, even in Assam and other places, they are not able to talk about CAA and NRC. Because they do in Bengal. They try to use it in parts of Bengal. They will always use it, right? But people can't be fooled all the time. And I think it's a matter of our patiently, as Sindhu said, patiently working with people, mobilizing them on their livelihood issues. You can never de-link the fight against communalism from the fight against neoliberalism. This is corporate Hindutva we're dealing with. So anybody who thinks that you can just only fight communalism and accept neoliberal policies, I don't think we'll get very far. So we are on the left, we are stressing the need to fight simultaneously Hindutva and ultra neoliberal policies. And that's the way to go forward, I think.
And one thing, comrade, it's very interesting that Sonia Gandhi writing article about against privatization and
I know.
Rahul Gandhi giving a slogan of Vakka percent unity. No, means and Amrinder Singh giving a slogan of
Yes, yes.
Vakka
It's not
percent
compulsory.
unity. Rahul Gandhi. So this is what happening. So the thing is that our consistent our slogans have been taken up by the people.
Yes.
Means whether electorally, whether the left is winning how
That's
much,
much more difficult. Yeah.
much more than that, our politics is now getting a dominant role, and our means that is the crucial thing. So how we can politically consolidate, that is a question addressed to be addressed at the political level. But in the classroom, we are trying at our level best, and we are trying to build the class unity that will only be determining the future of the country. Means we can do hundreds of debates of identity politics and all. We have to self-critically and frankly discuss where we have failed to address the class issues on gender in the caste issues where we have to, and today is the time what hadras and such incidents when we are debating also, we have to highlight the class angle, why the minimum wages question is not being debated when you discuss caste. So that is not being raised by any of these identity politics led movements. So there, our role is there that we have to take up the question. And when gender is discussed, debated, is beyond the body politics, why the unpaid labor is not focused at the foremost. So that has to be highlighted, and it's a consistent means the struggle. Often we are called that okay, you are ritualistic, your struggles, and it has helped politicizing the society. 30 years of whatever we were blamed of ritualistic programs and struggle, consistent campaign and being with the people that only could build this historic Kisan movement and the workers' percent unity where the Congress is forced to take such a position and the BJP ministers are forced to write to the central BJP ministers that you have to change this policy, withdraw these policies. So this is the only way, comrades. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Can I ask our PSU organizers, should we wind up now or? It's 8:30. So do we have time or should we wind up? Sharita, please tell us.
Yeah, I think we can wind up now.
Yeah. Do we have a formal winding up by anybody or do the chat just do
Yeah.
that?
Yes, yes. I'm inviting Comrade Ashika for delivering vote of thanks, General Secretary of PSF.
Hi, comrades.
Okay, before you
Hi,
do
everyone.
that, May Day salute to all of you. Red salute.
Red salute.
All right. Yeah.
First of all, I would like to extend the May Day solidarity to all of you. And it was really a honor to have both of you for today's lecture, and especially on this auspicious day of May Day. And the session was really insightful in a way that it actually highlighted the issues that should be kept in center, that questions that should be asked every time, and the importance of class struggle, and how it is the way forward for India and for each of us. And there is no other better day to discuss all these issues, and both of you have actually taken this from the like boundaries of a lecture to more like a conversation, rather a discussion with the people who have been asking questions. And it has been really very conversational kind of a thing, and it was really nice. And I would like to extend my thanks on behalf of Progressive Students Forum to Comrade A.R. Sindhu for coming here and delivering the lecture, and also to Atreya sir for being here and moderating the session, and for your insightful comments. And I would like to thank all the viewers who's watching us live on Facebook, and to all the other comrades. And thank you for joining. And we will be having this May Day lecture next year also. So I hope you can see there in the next year. Maybe not in an online manner. We can be together physically and celebrate a proper May Day. Thank you all. Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you.